family of 4 stayed in a ryokan on holiday. Late one night, the mother found her daughter murdered in the toilet. She was stabbed all over, and her face cut so badly that no one could tell who she was. Her tongue was also missing from her dead body. There was a small vent and a tiny window in the room, only 30 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and covered in lattice. It was too small for a person to enter, and the door was locked. Who got in, and from where? The police questioned the couple who owned the ryokan, their son, and the local delinquents, but the room was locked from the inside, so the case went unsolved. But then one day, the couple who ran the ryokan appeared at the police station with their son in tow. We were unable to speak truthfully the other day because everyone's eyes were on us, but something terrible has happened, so we'd like to share it with you. Our son likes to secretly film people, and we've warned him over and over again, but on the night of the incident, he was filming the toilet from above the ceiling. While he was filming, the glass of the small window opened, and a small... No, you should just watch the tape from start to finish. They asked the son about the tape, but the fear reignited within him, and he started to act half crazed. Wondering what could be on the tape to make the boy act in such a way, the investigators pressed play. The tape showed a commanding view of the girl while she was urinating. The girl was squatting over a Japanese-style toilet, and when she stood up, the window opened. A tiny old woman, only 15 to 20 centimeters high, jumped through, holding a shard of glass. The girl didn't even have time to scream. The tiny old woman cut her throat, then her face and body. As she took her last breaths, the tiny old woman cut out her tongue, and then looked up, towards the ceiling. "You're next." She fled back out the window, holding the girl's tongue and part of her scalp. One investigator threw up. Another broke down in tears, and supposedly, another passed out in fear. The crime went unsolved, but it said that the videotape in question is still kept in storage at the police headquarters. Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Have you joined our newsletter yet? Each Sunday we send out a brief email featuring bits of Japanese horror news, recommendations, sales, freebies, top 5 lists, and much more. Head over to kowabana.net/newsletter to make sure you don't miss out. Each newsletter is brief and to the point because you don't have time to waste, and to be honest, neither do I. That's kowabana.net/newsletter. This week, we're looking at stories of things that shouldn't be, the unexplainable, the supernatural. Have you ever been mountain climbing before? Japan is, of course, an extremely mountainous region, and many mountains are worshipped as kami themselves. They are also extremely dangerous for those who aren't experienced, and who knows what may be hiding in their hidden depths. The young men in this next story are about to uncover something they wish they hadn't. This one's called Winter Climbing Mountain. This happened several years ago when I went mountain climbing. I was a university student at the time and a member of the mountain climbing club. I made a lot of new friends and was having the time of my life. In particular, I was good friends with A and B from the mountain climbing club, and we were all extremely close even outside of club activities. When we were in our second year at uni, We still had plenty of time before we had to look for jobs and write our graduation thesis, so we decided to go on a trip at the end of the school year. Of course, our trip was to go mountain climbing. Even though we'd climbed winter mountains numerous times, we didn't have a lot of confidence going by ourselves, so we decided to visit Mount K, close to A's family home. A climbed Mount K several times as a child, so he said he felt confident going there alone. We planned our trip for 3 nights and 4 days, and on the first day, we would stay at A's family home. The next day, we would set out to conquer the mountain. When we arrived at A's house, he showed us around. Then we decided to do a little sightseeing and visit a shrine to pray for protection as we climbed the mountain. We visited the largest shrine in town, but when we entered the shrine grounds, B suddenly stopped and looked at us strangely. "Someone's watching us. I don't like it. This isn't good. Not good at all," he said. And despite the fact it was winter, he broke out in a sweat. B was able to sense the supernatural. This fact didn't usually come up in daily life, but he was generally able to sense dangerous situations and presences. Once, B said that he dreaded the next day, and when the next day came, the roof at school collapsed, killing several people. Knowing that B was able to sense things, A said, "Well, let's go back. We'll hit a hot spring and just take it easy." We all agreed and went back to his house. I forgot to mention it earlier, but A's family ran a hot spring. Anyway, on the way back, B looked rather depressed and kept muttering about how something was following us. A was also worried about him, so he said, "Don't worry. I'll ask my grandpa about a way to cleanse us of anything bad, okay?" When we got back, A asked his grandfather about how we could get rid of the dark presence, and he told us to scream "Katsu," a shout commonly used in Zen Buddhism to strike the spirit. It seemed kinda stupid, but things calmed down, so we went to use the hot spring and then went to bed early to prepare for the next day. The next day was sunny, perfect weather for mountain climbing. We could barely contain our excitement. Even B, who a day earlier had constantly looked worried, couldn't wait to get up there. We set out at 8 a.m. and made good progress as we started up the mountain. Mountains in winter may seem dreary, but as time goes on and the altitude changes, the air gets sweeter, and the signs of life amongst the never-ending white landscape are an entirely different experience to climbing a normal mountain. I also enjoy taking photos, so I had an exceedingly great time as we proceeded further up the mountain. We enjoyed what the mountain had to offer in the morning, and made our way towards the small cabin hut, about halfway up. The atmosphere changed right around lunchtime. The weather remained pleasant, but the air seemed stagnant, and there was no movement or signs of life around us. Until that point, A was in the lead, keeping a comfortable pace, followed by B, and then myself. Right around the time I noticed how still it was around us, B suddenly picked up the pace. If there's one thing you can say about snowy mountains, it's that they can turn into tragedy in an instant. If I continued at the same pace, I'd be left behind, in a world of nothing but white. So fearfully, I hurried to catch up. Thankfully, they didn't leave me behind, but when I caught up to B, I noticed he was acting strangely. A also seemed to notice, and came back to check on him. B's face was pale. "It's no good. It followed us here. It's no good. Oh, no good. No good." Remembering what happened the day before, A and I turned to look at each other. B suddenly looked up and said, "Don't look behind you! Don't look behind you! I'm sorry. It looks like that thing from yesterday followed us. I'm scared. Shit." And then he looked like he was about to break out into tears. I couldn't see ghosts, so I figured if I turned around, I wouldn't see anything anyway. I ignored B's warning and looked over my shoulder. It was there. Something was standing there, roughly 50 meters away. Human, but not quite human, staring intently at us. I looked at A, and it appeared he saw the same thing as well. His face hardened. It was the first time I'd seen anything supernatural, and while I was surprised, I couldn't take my eyes off it. Its head was long and appeared to be hidden behind black hair. The shape of it looked somewhat like a swollen human, but I couldn't tell whether it was covered in white fur or just hazy and hard to see. At any rate, it most definitely did not give off human vibes. It was clearly not from our world. It didn't move, but continued to watch us. Strangely, I felt its green gaze upon me. It's hard to explain, but there's no other way to describe it. "We're screwed, right?" B said. "There's nothing we can do now." He was confused and crying. His fear transferred to us, and we began crying as well. We started screaming at each other, tears running down our faces, telling each other not to give up and to run. Thankfully, the cabin wasn't too far away, so we ran for it as fast as we could. Usually there was always somebody inside, but more than that, we were too scared to run past that thing again on our way back down the mountain. We continued for 30 minutes at a considerable pace, but we couldn't put any more distance between us and that thing. It stayed constantly at the same distance of 50 meters away, calmly following us. Thinking back on it now, that thing wasn't walking. Every time I turned back, it was standing still, its legs together. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say that it wasn't chasing us, but that it was always just 50 meters behind us. It was slowly starting to wear on my sanity. A short while later, A screamed, "This way! It's a shortcut!" He left the regular mountain trail and entered a thin trail off the side. But, thinking about it, this was a mistake. The thin trail was possibly looked after during summer, but in winter, it was covered in snow and extremely difficult to see. Before we knew it, we'd strayed from the path. To make matters worse, the sunny weather disappeared around 2 p.m, and heavy snow began to fall. Before we knew it, it was past 4 p.m, and we'd been running from that thing for over 3 hours. Night falls quickly in the mountains during winter. The sun was already descending, and perhaps I was just imagining things, but the snow seemed to be piling quite quickly as well. After losing our way, we found ourselves running along a steep 30-degree slope. I was no longer thinking about the cabin, nor finding the path that led to it. I was moving on pure instinct, trying my best to get away from the thing following us. But the stress continued to eat away at us, wearing us down. B's leg got tangled in something and he tripped, stumbling to the ground. A and I rushed over to help him up. "Oh, it's no good. I'm done for. I can't walk. Go on ahead. It's gonna catch up to us soon," he said. B had probably been aware of that thing's presence constantly since the day before. The fatigue on his face wasn't normal, and on top of that, he looked dehydrated. There was no way B could walk again. A and I were at a loss as to what to do. Part of me hoped that if we took a break, that thing would continue to remain at a distance of 50 meters behind us. I was also physically at the end of my rope. My hopes were swiftly betrayed. It took its first steps toward us. It was a slow, dull movement, but it was enough to crush my hopes. A, who seemed to have the most energy left, finally collapsed as well. It walked towards us, step by step. It was no longer 50 meters away. Wrapped in despair, I wondered if I was really going to die in such a place. When they found my body, they'd probably think that I froze to death. Or maybe they wouldn't find me at all. Various thoughts ran through my head. Then, suddenly, A stood up. "Shit! I'm gonna kill you! You're done for! Quit screwing with me, you fucking freak! Come on!" Then he screamed, "Cats!" Like his grandfather told him, he put all his spirit behind the scream. The thing didn't react at all. But, perhaps thanks to his large scream, snow started to fall in an avalanche where it was standing. The thing screamed as snow roared down on top of it, and it was swept away. We sat there, unharmed, our mouths hanging wide open. Afterwards, we dug out a snow cave and spent the night inside. The next day, we descended the mountain. The events of that day are still a source of trauma for me. I still have no idea what happened. Is there someone out there who perhaps knows what that thing might have been? Our final story for this week features two young couples who go to the beach for a fun summer's day out. On the way back, one of the young men suggests they have a race. A race that will have disastrous consequences for all. This one's called You Are. One summer's day, two couples went to the beach to swim. Let's call them A, A's girlfriend, B, and B's girlfriend. A rode there on his bike, while the other three went in B's car. As the sun was setting and it was time to go home, B suddenly said, "Let's have a race." A on his bike and B in the car with their girlfriends would race all the way home. Both couples lived together in the same apartment building, which is how they knew each other. B's car was the first to arrive home. B and his girlfriend celebrated their win, but A's girlfriend looked worried. A was a really good driver, so he should have been the first back. A didn't come home that day, and when she woke up the next morning, A's girlfriend was greeted with terrible news. B and his girlfriend went to visit her apartment with sad, worried looks on their faces. B began. "We received a phone call from the police this morning. A had an accident while he was turning a corner, and he died. He collided with the guardrail at high speed. He died instantly." A's girlfriend had been considering that as a possibility the entire night, but hearing it was still a shock, and she broke down in tears. But B and his girlfriend had even more shocking news. They both trembled, and A's girlfriend felt like they had something more to say. B's girlfriend continued. We said we got a phone call this morning, right? Look, don't be afraid, okay? But someone came to see us after that. We wondered who it might be and asked who it was. It's A, B interrupted, finishing the story for his girlfriend. A's girlfriend didn't know what to say. All she could do was listen. I thought it was all a bad joke and was ready to go off at him, but he came right after we got off the phone. There was no time for him to be messing around. We were scared. We couldn't open the door. And then he left. B and his girlfriend told A that if her boyfriend arrived, she mustn't open the door for him, no matter what. According to them, A didn't know that he was dead, and he would try to drag them all down with him. After they went home, A's girlfriend cried, the memories of her time together with A swirling around in her head. That night, A's girlfriend was awoken by a knock at the door. He's here. She did her best to ignore it. A continued to knock on the door. Hey, it's me. Open up. A's girlfriend sat in the corner, desperately covering her ears. Unable to ignore the nostalgia of their memories together, she finally got up and approached the door. Open up! It's me! The knocks got louder. A's girlfriend drew closer. She could see his shadow on the other side of the door, and tears fell from her eyes. Before she knew it, she was standing right in front of the door. She reached out to open it. But A was dead. She screamed as loud as she could. You're dead! The knocks grew louder. A's girlfriend readied herself to open the door, hoping that she could at the very least help him to move on. You're dead! You're the ones who are dead! A's girlfriend passed out. When she came back to, she was in the hospital. In front of her stood A, who should have been dead, and she cried tears of happiness. A began talking, hoping to make her understand. I was the first one home after the race. You guys never came. I went back the way we came and the car was a mess. B and his girlfriend died instantly. You only had light injuries, but you've been in a coma all this time. At first, that was all A's girlfriend could understand of the situation, but soon she became fearful and refused to leave A's side. For you see, B and B's girlfriend died instantly, but they entered A's girlfriend's mind while she was stuck in a state between life and death to drag her down with them. If she had continued to ignore A's calls, then she would have died as well. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of our continuing and new patrons. It's thanks to you guys that I'm able to continue making this show. If you'd like to support the Kowabana podcast, as well as get early access, bonus episodes, and other exclusive benefits, check out patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to continue making this show, so thank you. And I'll see you again next time on Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.